Hey, welcome back to Gear Talk and Noria podcast. I'm Wes Cash, your host, and today we're going to be talking more of the soft skill sides of things. We are going to be talking specifically, how do we get buy-in from our maintenance staff to improve our reliability program? And I'm excited to have Paul Farless with us here today because remember, the whole goal of this podcast is to understand, the individual, and we are connecting reliability professionals with reliable information. So, Paul, why don't you give us a little bit of introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Paul Farless, as he said. I've been with Noria for going on 5 years now. Yeah. They've taught me a lot. I love working here, and I get to see, a ton of different places. I've been to countless number of plants.
That's around the world at this point.
Yeah, literally global. Anything from dog food to roofing to, whatever you could throw in there. We've been to that plant. There's a good chance. Which gives me a unique advantage in the field because I've had a lot of experience in a short amount of time. I've seen a lot of different issues, a lot of different failures, things like that. A lot of positive things as well. But one of the main things that I see in most of the plants is this common issue of actually getting the team to buy in. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about that, when I was asked to come on.
I think that you have a good background with this, right? Because you're prior military, right? Yep. So you come from the Navy, where obviously a team, because you're going to be out on a ship for an extended amount of time.
Exactly.
Right. You do firefighting. You're a volunteer firefighter. So once again, a big team mechanism there, right? Yep. You have to have trust and everything else. So this is something that you live in a daily basis, right?
Oh, yeah.
Making sure that everyone's together, everyone's working the same way, and trying to find focus to actually move forward.
What I always think of is any team, regardless if it's all male or co-ed or whatever you want to call it, it's always a brotherhood. Like you were talking about the military. My division, I was a gunner's mate. We had females in our division, but it was a brotherhood, right? If we're not all on the same page, this goes back to a football team, a baseball team, in school, a military division, the firehouse with the guys. It's like if we don't all have the common goal, the common vision, the big picture. We're not all doing things individually, executing those tasks, day in and day out to get to that end goal. Then a lot of these efforts and these big investments on the front end are for nothing, more or less, if you can't get everybody on the same page. And you do see it time and time again. Like we talked about, all the different plants that I've been to and things like that. You go in and it's like you'll have a team of, let's say, 10 guys, right? Whether that be lube techs or maintenance techs or whatever they may be, lubricators we'll call them.
So we'll say frontline staff, because these are the people that are actually going out there
day in and
getting
day
stuff
out.
done.
Exactly.
They're fixing machines, they're doing the PMs, whatever it is. So frontline staff.
Yeah. So I go in there and I see these guys and girls, and we'll say 8 out of 10 of them are super gung-ho. They're motivated. They come in. They want to do their job correctly. They want to, improve the reliability. They want to improve. Everybody wants to be better at their job. If you don't want to be better at your job, there's something, wrong with your attitude. I would say that's something that we should personally get in check. But it's always it
might not be a good fit.
It might not be a good, exactly. There's plenty of reasons, but I always see these, one or two people that seem to be, for lack of better terms, the bad apple.
Or just reluctant to change.
Yeah, just very hesitant, resistant, I'd say. And the thing is I think that's human nature. I get resistant to change. We talk about this a lot, just in our personal conversations. It's like I'll get a big change in life, and we talk about, faith and stuff like that every now and then, and it's like you pray for answers, you talk to whatever God you're into, and you want that sign to say, hey, am I right in this role or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I think what I see the most, and this, like I said, this goes back to sports teams and military and firehouse and all of those things. At the end of the day, it's usually the issue is, while those people are reluctant to change or hesitant to change, what I see is that they don't understand fully what the big picture is. They're just told to do something. Yeah. And then they're like, my job has just now become even more tedious. and
don't connect it to kind of an end goal.
Exactly. And they don't see that making these small day-to-day changes and having this culture change actually happen will actually, in the long run, I'm not worried about next week. I'm worried about, me and you talk about goals all the time. I'm setting goals for 5 years from now and 10 years from then.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm always thinking long term. How can I make my job not only, and I don't want to say easier, because sometimes work is work and it's going to be work and you got to work hard.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I want to become more efficient at my job.
Sure.
Right.
Well, and there's a difference between, all right, if your job is a very tactical job, meaning you've got stuff that you got to do, day to day that impacts the here and now, and maybe you don't have as much of an impact in the strategic aspects of things.
Yeah.
Right. It may be hard to have that kind of a, connection of how what you're doing right here now actually impacts 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to walk us through this, right? Because you're a consultant, right? You go out to these plants, you're focusing primarily on lubrication programs, and you go in and you may score them and say, all right, these are the things that you need to change. You may go out for coaching, support, a lot of different things. So when you go out there, maybe it's an initial visit and you set a game plan with the customer and say, this is how we need to go. This is the things that you need to focus on. How do you start getting buy-in there? Because you're going to be working with different levels of people.
Yeah.
You're going to be working with frontline staff. You're probably going to be working with managers, right? So now a little bit more removed. You may be working with engineers or even plant management. Mm-hmm. So you've got a lot of hierarchy there that you got to deal with.
So this is kind of a multiple part answer to that question, because I like how you bring up the different levels of we'll call them characters in the team, right? You got your reliability engineer, you got your maintenance manager or supervisor, right, that works under him. Then under him, you might have the actual frontline staff, like we talked about, and it's a little bit different at each level to get them to buy into change or get them to want to change. Now, talking about the reliability engineer, 9 times out of 10, if it's a plant driven project instead of a corporate driven project, the reliability engineers already bought in, or he wouldn't have called us in the first place, right?
Okay.
That's a lot
of the times. For the record,
times.
I want to circle back on the corporate driven thing as well.
Yeah, and I will.
Okay.
But then you go into, the maintenance supervisor or manager, one under the reliability engineer, and that may be different plant to plant. But generally when we come in there, I like to, first off, just get a meeting with those guys and talk to them about, what are your reliability goals? Are you two even on the same page, or is the management team on the same page? Because that's where it all starts.
So this kind of clears the air.
Yes, that clears the air.
Starts to put everything on paper.
Yeah, we're putting the puzzle together here, right? Yeah. And then I'll go out to the field.
I'm guessing people may have different ideas.
Oh, 100%.
And maybe they've never had that discussion before.
Yeah, and a lot of the times they have. When I go in there, they've had somewhat of a discussion. But, lubrication specifically is generally what I talk about when I go in there, because when we talk about reliability, vibration, thermography, lubrication, ultrasonic, whatever it may be, that's lubrication is it's a large piece, but it's only one piece of that pie, and
it's a pillar for reliability.
Success, and I think that sometimes they don't put enough emphasis on lubrication. So what I do generally is I'll give them a pseudo informal training.
Okay.
And it's just very conversational, like you and I do a lot. And I just let them know about the front end investment is going to have a large back end return on investment, right?
Yeah.
That's, when you talk about managers and engineers and things like that, or plant, supervisor staff type roles, it's all numbers. It's a lot of numbers to them.
Well, I agree that at some point, right, at some level, someone's going to have to talk dollars.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I think everyone will agree, hey, if we can do something that makes things better, we want to do it. Yeah. But it may not make the most financial sense right now. Exactly. It may not slot in priorities. Yeah. Yeah. I like how you say, you start getting everyone on the same page, because I think, having that vision, right, is what a lot of people point out to, or a common goal. This is why corporations have mission statements, vision statements, right? Exactly. We're trying to align to a point, so we don't have all these, disparate efforts. Yeah. So, all right. So you've met with the maintenance manager, you've met with the reliability engineer. Now you said you're going to the field.
Yep. So now I go into the field, and I'm usually only guided around by one or two, people, just depending on area to area in the plant. Excuse me. And generally, I just more than, I'm looking around, I'm paying attention when I'm assessing a program, right? I'm doing my job, but more than that, I'm also building a relationship with each individual that I do meet, especially at the ground level, that field staff, like we was talking about, because, these are the guys and gals that they don't often get to see the big plan. They don't often get to see the big picture. There more times than not, they're just getting tasks passed down to them. Hey, get these done.
Here's your work order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's your list. Get the list done by the end of the week. Report back to me. Give me any notes for abnormal conditions. Right. But I do believe that breeds some
disconnect.
Disconnect between field staff and, we'll call them, for lack of better terms, office staff. Right.
Okay.
And what I like to generally talk to those people about is, why they brought me in here. Not only do they get to know who I am on a personal level and a professional level, but I let them know exactly why we're in here and what the result could potentially be, given that they actually change the way they're doing things. They actually become more tedious and more detail oriented in their task. And I'm talking specifically about lubrication stuff. Yeah. Maintenance aside, just how you're greasing equipment, how much grease you're putting in this motor, and how often you're greasing that motor, how you're cleaning your stored oils, how you're disposing of your used oil versus waste oil, right? Yeah. Knowing the difference between that, all those different things. How all these little changes, I call it, when I give these, the ML1 training, I always call it, in the beginning, we are building the foundation in the house of lubrication. And each of these aspects, right, are individual bricks. So training is an individual brick. There's individual bricks within that, right? There's what type of training do I need training on ultrasonic greasing? Do I need training on filtration? How to pick a filter? What is viscosity? Why is viscosity important? All of these little things, they add up, and then we start talking about, contamination and what that does and the effects that has, right? So that's just a training example, but I explain to these gentlemen and these ladies that, look, if you make these changes, if you change the way you're doing things, I am passionate about this because I've been on the other side of this, and I know that it can be frustrating, but I'm telling you right now, and I truly believe in this, if you make these changes, in the long run, your job becomes easier.
So that's somewhat evangelistic, right? I mean, you're going out there and you're preaching, saying, man, there is a better way.
Yes.
You haven't seen it, but just trust me, it's right around the corner. Yep. You just have to take these steps.
Yep.
So what do you think is that click? What do you think is that initial thing when people go, you know what, I think he's right. Yes, we need to start doing this.
So I think it's it's kind of a mixture of how and I'm not trying to be cocky about this, but I think it's a mixture of how I am as a person, because I feel like I can gain somebody's, and not in a manipulative way, but in a true, honest way, I can gain somebody's trust, and when I tell them, my past, when we're talking about what'd you do before this, I turn wrenches, I'm the same, I am that guy that I'm talking to. So I feel like I know them already when I go in there.
Yeah.
But once I gain their trust and back and forth, right? I think that opens the door for them to trust what I'm saying, because I'm a young guy, and although it doesn't seem like I have a lot of experience, I do have a lot of experience. I've seen a lot of things in this industry, and it's like once they see how honest my passion is for it, and how I truly believe that if you make these changes in the long run, you will fight less fires. We want you to get, that's a big part of LUPM, right? That's what I tell them. We want you to get to a level where you are inspecting and monitoring more than you are re-greasing or changing oils or anything like that, right? We go back to the training thing. You want to reduce the amount of repairing, replacing, rebuilding, and removing. Yeah. Now you're going out there. Now, when it comes to like ultrasonic greasing, you're doing it once a month anyways, but you're trending and tracking and things.
Maybe more, depending on the plant.
Whatever it may be. But you're going out there and you're fighting less fires. When I tell somebody that if you make these changes, you're going to go out there and all you got to do is check sight glasses and check for abnormal conditions, that becomes a lot easier to them. And not only does that help them in their lubrication program, their day-to-day life, but they might be maintenance techs.
Yeah.
Right. They're not, not all these companies have these lube champions that we call them. They're not dedicated to lubrication. Yeah. They're dedicated to their maintenance, to their craft, which I highly respect. But what I tell them is if you get lubrication correct, you're going to be fighting less fires as a maintenance technician. You're going to be out there replacing and rebuilding a lot less than you are right now, because it sucks. I know for a fact it sucks going into work in the morning. You get up at 5 a.m., whatever it may be. You go in for a 12-hour shift, and as soon as you get to work, you have this stack of work orders to do, and then all of a sudden stuff starts breaking, and now all those work orders go out the window because I got to fight this fire, I got to fix what's broken, and then do my regular normal routine stuff, right? And that's what I explained to them. I'm not just trying to, do my job. I'm not just trying to come in here and, they call me to do, build your lubrication program or assess your lubrication program. So I'm just going to tell you what you need to do and leave you there. I'm here to help the whole time. You can call me, you can text me. I have customers all the time calling me and texting me, most of the time talking about hunting and fishing, because that's what we do. I talk to those guys about hunting and fishing. I'm very passionate about that, but they always, they call and text, Travis and I, and I'm sure yourself as well. Just about general questions about, they're hesitant to do things a certain way because they want to do it right. That's when I know they are willing to put in the investment. Yeah. They're willing to personally, on a professional level, when they go into work, they're willing to make these changes. They're willing to go that extra mile to it's an investment on the front end of your own time. Yep. To get more time back in return.
It's also a little bit of putting your reputation at stake, right? Because someone's going to, follow and say, you know what, I believe you, so I'm going to take whatever actions I need to take to make it happen. Yeah. If we just threw everything you said in a pot and we boiled it down to its simplest components, right? It sounds like what we're left with is you're going to start with getting everyone on the same page. Yep. And not necessarily saying we need to do it one way or the other, just understand where everyone sits. Yeah. You're going to be building rapport with the people that you're working with. So now you're connecting at both a personal and a professional level. Sounds like education is key to this. Actually showcasing, all right, there is a better way to do it. And then from there, I guess you're offering, tools, resources, expertise to enable it. So, would you say, those four things are...
I think the biggest, You touched on two things right there that I think are overlooked quite often. Is when you're painting the big picture, when you're trying to get that buy-in, it's one thing to go out and say, hey, I know you're just putting 2 pumps of grease in these bearings and everything, but now I want you to put 0.23 ounces in that bearing, right? And that guy's going to be like, yeah, get out of here. Yeah. That's where training comes in. Right. We're not just coming up with this stuff out of nowhere, out of thin air. Right. This is very calculated. This is very, thought through. And I'll be honest, it wasn't me that thought through these things. Right. These are principles and knowledge that was passed down from you to me, from Jim to me, from Bennett to me, my surroundings. Even these plants, I learned so much. Some of these guys have been in these plants longer than I've been alive, and I'm not kidding. Longer than I've been alive. I'm 30 years old, and they've been in the plant 35, sometimes even 40 years. I soak up every bit of knowledge I can from these guys, and we talk about tribal knowledge all the time. But, that training, showing them why this is the better way to do that is so huge.
Well, there's a sense of engagement at that point too, right? And usually they say that's the best barometer of someone's either satisfaction with their job or how well they like coming to work is the level of engagement that they put out, So these are voluntary suggestions that then get enacted upon, right? It shows that there's actually a give and take.
Yeah. And behind training, the other point that I was saying was support. You said that at the end. Not only, support from us, the support from us will be there, right? You've hired us to do a job. If I put my name on a job, I'm going to give you my very best effort. That's one thing about me. It might not be fun all the time, but I will give you my best effort. I guarantee you that. Now, on the other side of that, if they don't have the support from, their managers or their corporation or whatever it may be.
This may tie back. I said I wanted to come back into the corporate side.
Yes.
So is that an issue? You see corporate push this and then may not give the support that is needed?
Yeah, and I think that's why I brought that up in the beginning was, the difference between corporate-driven projects and plant-driven projects, right? So when it's plant-driven, those guys are generally more bought in already because they've had these conversations.
Well, it's more grassroots.
Yeah, it's more grassroots. That's an excellent way to put it. But when it's corporate, and I get it, sometimes
someone from outside your plant,
they see something, or it might not have anything to do with your plant specifically. We might have in this corporation X, right? X corporation might have 15 15 plants of all different types of processes, right, across the U.S. or whatever it may be. Well, plant A of that corporation might be running fantastically, but plant Z might not be running that great, and they're basing.
They get all lumped together.
You're only strong as your weakest link, right? So that corporation will go in there and say, "Hey, we want to soup up Z to where it's on A's level." I know this is a weird example, but they call Noria. We come in and we do this assessment. We get this culture change. We build these programs, and plant A feels slightly, well, they feel slighted a little bit, like, oh, we're not doing a good enough job, or things like that. And, or, hey, they're kind of chip on the shoulder type of thing where we're good over here. We don't need corporate's help necessarily.
Yeah.
So we come in there and it's always some friction. And I think that, that's one thing we talk about just in our own team is the fact that, when it comes to working in services at Noria, you got to be a certain type of individual. You got to be somebody that can get along with anybody. I can get along with that brick wall right there. You know what I mean? I could talk to anybody. But the thing is we're genuine about it. Yeah. I'm not going in there and faking these relationships. If I don't mesh with you, or some people just don't mesh together. That's what it is. But I'm still going to try to help you regardless, right? Yeah. And I think that's a big thing. Is I'm kind of getting off subject here, but with the corporate versus plant driven projects, I think the corporate driven projects are a little bit more difficult to get that buy-in. Now, is that something that we deal with a lot? Yes. Is it something that I change my process for? No. I do the same exact process in every plant because I feel like I don't even want to take credit for it, but I would say my process, the way I do it, I feel like it is proven. I feel like it works. I'm very passionate about how I do those things.
It doesn't show at all.
Yeah. No kidding. But, when I go in there and it's a corporate-driven project, even I get a little frustrated sometimes because you go in there and these guys, they don't necessarily see why they need to change. And it might just be these very minuscule changes, and that's what I tell them.
Well, you're probably starting off, kind of on your heels a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm getting the time signal here, so it's been a great conversation, and it's one that we need to unpack a lot further, it sounds like.
I can go on all day.
But I do want to give you the last word. So, I want you to, are there any, pearls of wisdom, or if you wanted to boil down, just a few key points, what do you want the listeners to take away?
Well, like I said, I'm only 30 years old, so I don't have a lot of wisdom in me. But as far as getting, buy-in to your program, and I think you taught me this, is metrics go so far. Post those metrics in the lube room, post them in the lunchroom or whatever, right? To show them that the changes that you are doing every day, the things that you are now, the changes that you have made are directly making an effect.
Yeah.
Show the increased life in machine life due to lubrication practices. Show these KPIs, right? Give them a signal that they are doing well at their job.
Showcase the wins.
Exactly. Showcase the wins. I think more than anything, that gets more buy-in than all the other stuff, right? Just showcase the wins. Tell them if they're doing the correct thing. I'm not saying praise them, kiss their feet, but go in there and let them know that they're doing a good job,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing right there.
I think that's fantastic. Well, Paul, I definitely appreciate it. For all of our listeners and viewers, thank you so much. This once again has been another episode of Gear Talk. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or even suggestions for other topics on Gear Talk, you can always email us at podcast@noria.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.